Hi guys and welcome back to Full House Sports. Here myself Charlie. I'm on before the video starts to please like the video if you like the content, and to please check out the channel for a range of different content on a range of different sports. And if you like the content of the channel, please subscribe. Anything you guys do for me is greatly appreciated, so thank you in advance. Right, I'm going to be starting a weekly feature on the channel because for anyone that knows me will tell you I'm a massive fan of Italian football. I think my dad sort of regaled me with tales of Football Italia in the 90s. I'm sure there's others who have had that same experience. I've been fortunate enough to visit Italy to watch games. I've been to the San Siro to watch Inter and fell in love really with the whole sort of mystique around Italian football, whether that's the names, the fans, the ultras, the tifos, the managers, the owners who are sometimes crazy. All of it for me sort of just captured me and has captured me since like I say, my dad telling me those stories when I was younger. And we're going to be starting a week feature called Calcio Corner, where I'm going to be talking about the news and the views and different stories coming from Serie A. Because yes, it's not what it used to be. It's not the powerhouse of the 90s, but it's still a league that for me is fascinating, and also a league on the up. We often associate it with defensive style of football with five at the back, but I think if you watch Italian football now and you watch some of the managers, Vincenzo Italiano, Gasperini's well known about now, Cesc Fabregas, others as well, the style of football being played is exciting, and it's not perhaps what people think it is or think it was. So, like I say, can we start this as a weekly feature? And there's no better place to start than after the international break. Now, I mentioned earlier this week on the channel that Saturday is just a mental day for sport. It's crazy with how much is going on. We have to have about 40 tellies on in different rooms. And just to add to the mix, one that I forgot to mention, I think it was the Crocodile preview I said about it on. One other thing I forgot to mention is the small matter of the Derby d'Italia, which is a huge game in Italy. It's sort of the Italian version of Manchester United Liverpool. It's a game that is between the two biggest clubs in the country. It's a game between the clubs that have won Serie A the most, or two of the clubs, that have won Serie A the most. And it's a game between two of the most well supported sides. And this Derby Italia has a very different feel about it, because you've got, I think, two sides who are a bit sort of unsure as to where they are in terms of where they are in the league and where they sort of stand. I've said quite openly about Inter that I think they'll struggle this year. I think the Inzaghi era is obviously over. We saw them dismantled in the Champions League by PSG, but I think that was sort of the writing was on the wall. They're an aging side. You only have to look at the squad, some of the members of it, Mkhitaryan, Cherby, just to name a couple. They're not getting any younger in that aspect. Stefan de Vrij as well is another one. And they've sort of tried this summer to reverse that. They've brought in players who are younger. Luis Enrique, Sucic looks to be a fantastic find. I was fortunate enough to watch him for Dinamo Zagreb, and what a player he is, and I think will be for Inter Milan and Croatia in the coming years. They've sort of tried to reverse this ageing process by blooding the squad with new youngsters, but it's not a straightaway quick fix. And I do think that as well, Inter's owners aren't really interested, but they're not fussed if Inter are winning the Scudetto. They're more worried if they're not getting the Champions League, if they're not getting that brand exposure from a business point of view. And that, I think, sort of been signalled from the lack of investment, really. Beppe Marotta, Javier Zanetti, a lot of people around the club have been coming out saying, no, we're going to invest, we're going to rebuild. I think that's a lie, to be brutally honest. I don't think that that's going to be happening. I think that they're going to be a side a little bit like the team they're playing on Saturday, Juventus, who are sort of going to be left a little bit unsure of their position in the European football picture. And Juventus, like I say, as I've just mentioned, are in a similar position where I think they're sort of looking and saying, well, can we challenge for the Scudetto? They had a relatively quiet summer where, again, it felt a little bit like the club is lacking direction. I think that's the key phrase around Juventus. Is there a club, it feels like, that are lacking direction? They tried the Thiago Motta experiment. It didn't work. It failed ultimately. They've tried other experiments in the dugout. They brought Allegri back. That didn't really work. It was awful football to watch. And clearly Serie A as a league had changed. as well in the time that he was back. I know that they were up there, but it feels like, yeah, they're a club lacking direction. And Summer was very quiet. They didn't get Randall Colomwani on a permanent. Although Dusan Vlahovic is a name I want to talk about just quickly, because I'm so glad to see him scoring goals. He's a player quite heavily criticised by Juventus fans, and I've often thought that that's slightly unfair. He's a guy who knows how to score goals in Serie A. He's a big target man, but he can also play in behind. He's quick, especially against Serie A defenders. And I think this game is huge for both clubs, because I think it really will show us where they're both at. I think if Inter win this, they will say, well, the Udinese game we lost before the international break was a blip, was just could be sort of written off. If they don't win it, I think it will it will justify what I've been thinking and vindicate what I've been thinking, which is I think they're a side that may struggle this year. And I can see Christian Kivu, who wasn't their first choice. We know Cesc Fabregas was their first choice. They didn't get him. I can see him maybe being out of a job by the end of the season, especially if European football or Champions League football is threatened, because that's the one thing that their owners, Oaktree, don't want. They don't want that to happen. If Juventus win as well, I think they will probably look at the other teams, sort of Roma and AC Milan and those other sides, and say, well, maybe we are a contender for Napoli's crown. I think Napoli are miles clear in terms of being favourites. I'll talk about them in a little bit. But I think if Juventus win, it's a huge psychological win for them to say, no, we're here, we're back in this sort of title picture. We've had a few years out, but we're back. They've also got Igor Tudor in charge, which was, again, maybe an underwhelming appointment, but he was given the job, and clearly the Juventus, well, whether Juventus board feel like he's the right man or whether they feel like he's maybe the cheapest man remains to be seen. But like I say, I think Saturday's derby d'Italia, it's not maybe the game it's been years ago where it was between two title contenders and you had 5 or 6 world-class players on each side. But it's still a huge game in Italy, and it's still a huge game in terms of Serie A and around the world as well. These clubs have massive fan bases around the world. That, of course, is one storyline in Serie A this weekend. There is another storyline on Monday where a certain Jamie Vardy will be making, or we think will make, his debut for Cremonese. Cremonese, should be pointed out, are one of only 3 teams in the league who are unbeaten at the moment. They went to San Siro on the first weekend and defeated AC Milan. They defeated Sassuolo on game week 2. I'm not saying that they're title contenders, but Vardy's done it before with Leicester. No, well, you never know. But I think it's a move that's really generated a lot of interest in Serie A. Certainly in this country, where we're looking and going, how will he get on? A lot of people probably were looking and saying, who are Cremonese? They're not historically the biggest of clubs. They're a provincial side in Italy. So for him to go there was probably raised a few eyebrows, especially when there's rumours of offers from Wrexham and Rangers and the MLS. How true that is, I don't know. But I think, like I said, there was a few eyebrows raised. They're playing Hellas Verona, who were defeated quite comprehensively by Lazio on game week 2 before the international break. And they're a side who like I say, are undefeated and will be feeling quietly confident. And I think there's a feeling, I know that he was questioned in a press conference the other day, Vardy, if he was over the hill. I think that was what they said, or if his best days were behind him. And he sort of responded and said, I'll have to prove you wrong. I think he'll do really well in Serie A. You know, although I've sort of tried to rubbish the claims it's a slow league at the start of the video, the centre-backs, like I say, players like Acerbi, they're not the quickest. And I think for a guy who maybe lost a yard of pace, and maybe that showed in the Premier League last season, I still think his pace will be enough in Serie A to get him in behind and cause a lot of problems. And we know what he's like in front of goals. I think it's a fantastic coup for Cremonese, and I hope it works for him. I hope it works for the club. It'd be great to see a club like them sort of challenging the elite or being up there. They've shown already this season that they're not going to go to anywhere and fear anyone, and Vardy embodies that. You know, you look at the way he always performed against the top 6 sides in the Premier League. That is massive. So he always turned up, I should say. So it might be a match made in heaven. He's probably gone there for the lifestyle. Who can blame him? Beautiful country. He might, I don't say have a revival, but I think he might have a bit of an Indian summer, as they say. Another sort of game that's caught the eyes, following up the Derby d'Italia, is Fiorentina versus Napoli. Napoli haven't been that impressive this season. I think they have fallen guilty of perhaps trying to fix something that isn't broken. The Kevin De Bruyne signing was massive. It was massive for the league. It was massive for the club. He sold a lot of shirts. I said to my friends when sort of they said, what do you think of it? Or we were discussing it, that I thought it was an interesting move. And I thought potentially it could affect Scott McTominay and where he was playing. We saw McTominay last year playing further forward, playing the sort of freelance number 10 role. That's really probably where De Bruyne wants to be as well. We saw Conte trying to play four midfielders. They've obviously got Anguissa and Lobotka as well as De Bruyne and McTominay. And it's felt clunky, I think would be the adjective I'd use to describe it. They were lucky against Cagliari on game week 2, scoring in the 95th minute. Anguissa got the winner there. A lot of people saying, that's what champions do. It is, and I don't want to say the writing's on the wall, but it's sort of summarised, I think, where they are. They're a side that I think are trying to add to the squad. They're trying to give Antonio Conte what he wants. Probably the best thing of the summer was him staying. We saw the last 2 times they've won titles, Spalletti was forced out and they had to rebuild. I say last 2 times, right? The last time they won the title, Spalletti was forced out and so that squad was dismantled. It was Rudy Garcia came in, it all went wrong. They kept Conte. We've seen him leave clubs before in a huff. He left Inter after he won the title. So it's fantastic in that sense that they've kept him. I just think they're maybe guilty of trying to do too much. They probably couldn't turn down the Kevin De Bruyne signing. If Kevin De Bruyne's services come up, you take him, especially with Champions League football, which they didn't have last year. But it has felt clunky. And Fiorentina are a side on the up under Stefano Pioli. They've obviously got Dzeko up front, who knows where the back of the net is. They've got Moise Kean, who is enjoying his football at Fiorentina. David De Gea is in goal and is as well showing everyone what a great goalkeeper he is. Last year was really a year of transition for them. They brought in, I think, 8 new players. They were under Rafael Palladino. Palladino, to the anger of the Viola fans, left in the summer. But Pioli is a guy who knows how to win the league. He won the league with AC Milan. And he's experienced in terms of Serie A and in terms of how to get results in that league. I think it's a fascinating game on Saturday. And I think it's a big test for Napoli because Fiorentina will probably be looking at that and saying they're not as good as what they were last year. It's at the Artemio Franchi, which is huge for Fiorentina, home field advantage with that atmosphere. It's on a Saturday night, and I could see this one maybe being a bit of an upset. I could see Fiorentina getting a result. Napoli might as well have one eye on the Champions League upcoming games. You never know. I think it's Man City up first for them. And that's an important thing as well in the Derby d'Italia, is how much of an eye will Juventus and Inter have on their games, because that starts next week. One other game that I wanted to talk about was Roma-Torino, where I think Roma, in my opinion, I'm going to put my neck on the line early, I think will be the main challengers to Napoli this season. For me, the best signing, forget De Bruyne, forget anyone else, Dzeko, anyone else in Serie A this year, the best signing was Roma signing Gianpiero Gasperini. He is such a good manager. Probably his age is factored against him in terms of not getting the job, I don't want to say higher up in European football, because that's an insult to what he's done at Atalanta. But his style of football, what he did with Atalanta, where he took them from where they were, it's entertaining, it's fast flowing, and he's gone to Roma in this summer and he's brought in players. He's known for revitalising strikers' careers. He's brought in Evan Ferguson, who looks a different player from the player that was poor at West Ham last year. A lot of West Ham fans said they were glad the club didn't take him on a permanent. And listen, I think Gasperini with Dybala as well, who had a good game. Sule was really impressive in their last game against Pisa. A really outstanding, to be honest. Dybala was as well. I had the pleasure of watching that. And for the first half, they struggled to break Pisa down, but they did eventually. We're unlucky actually not to get a second in that game. It was ruled out. But it's a I think they'll be a huge challenger this year to Napoli. I hope they are anyway. It'd be great to see Roma back up challenging for titles. And Torino are a side that are known for being leaky in defence. They were certainly leaky on the opening weekend at the San Siro. I think that could be performance of the weekend. I think Roma could put a few goals past them and really get, if everything clicks with Gasperini, will certainly be a contender in my opinion. Another storyline to look out for at the weekend is Pisa, who have signed, sorry, I don't know what the long pause was for there, is Pisa, who I think could get their first win against Udinese. They were unlucky in the Roma game. They defended really well. They've done, I think, the right bits of business in the transfer market. I won't say Champions League there. In the transfer market. They've signed Raul Albiol as well. They've got Cuadrado on their books alongside him. They've got experienced players who have played at the top level, and we've seen a few clubs in Serie A do that. Cremonese do that with Vardy, Sassuolo with Nemanja Matic, and Pisa have also done that. I think, like I say, they could get their first win at the weekend against Udinese. They are at home, so I think that's one to look out for, and I hope for their sake they do, because it'd be great to see them stay in Serie A. They, of course, big rivals with Fiorentina. That's a derby to look forward to this year. So like I say, this will be a weekly feature, Calcio Corner. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you like the content. And once again, have a good day. Thank you very much, guys.